12. Lose battles, but win the war. Grand strategy. Everyone around you is a strategist angling for power, all trying to promote their own interests, often at your expense. Your daily battles with them make you lose sight of the only thing that really matters, victory in the end, the achievement of greater goals, lasting power. Grand strategy is the art of looking beyond the battle and calculating ahead. It requires that you focus on your ultimate goal and plot to reach it. In grand strategy, you consider the political ramifications and long-term consequences of what you do. Instead of reacting emotionally to people, you take control and make your actions more dimensional, subtle, and effective. Let others get caught up in the twists and turns of the battle, relishing their little victories. Grand strategy will bring you the ultimate reward, the last laugh. The Great Campaign. Growing up at the Macedonian court, Alexander, 356–322 BC, was considered a rather strange young man. He enjoyed the usual boyish pursuits, such as horses and warfare, having fought alongside his father, King Philip II, in several battles. He had proved his bravery. But he also loved philosophy and literature. His tutor was the great thinker Aristotle, under whose influence he loved to argue about politics and science, looking at the world as dispassionately as possible. Then there was his mother, Olympias, a mystical, superstitious woman. She had visions at Alexander's birth that he would one day rule the known world. She told him about them and filled him with stories of Achilles, from whom her family claimed descent. Alexander adored his mother, while hating his father, and took her prophecies most seriously. From early on in life, he carried himself as if he were more than the son of a king. Alexander was raised to be Philip's successor, and the state he was to inherit had grown considerably during his father's reign. Over the years, the king had managed to build up the Macedonian army into the supreme force in all Greece. He had defeated Thebes and Athens, and had united all the Greek city-states, except Sparta, into a Hellenic league under his leadership. He was a crafty, intimidating ruler. Then, in 336 BC, a disgruntled nobleman assassinated him. Suddenly seeing Macedonia as vulnerable, Athens declared its independence from the League. The other city-states followed suit. Tribes from the north now threatened to invade. Almost overnight, Philip's small empire was unraveling. When Alexander came to the throne, he was only 20, and many considered him unready. It was a bad time for learning on the job. The Macedonian generals and political leaders would have to take him under their wing. They advised him to go slowly, to consolidate his position in both the army and Macedonia, and then gradually reform the league through force and guile. That was what Philip would have done. But Alexander would not listen. He had another plan, or so it seemed. Without giving his enemies in and beyond Macedonia time to organize against him, he led the army south and reconquered Thebes in a series of lightning maneuvers. Next, he marched on the Athenians, who, fearing his retribution, begged forgiveness and pleaded to be readmitted to the League. Alexander granted their wish. The eccentric young prince had shown himself to be a bold and unpredictable king, attacking when he was not meant to, yet showing Athens unexpected mercy. He was hard to read, but his first maneuvers as king had won him many admirers. His next move, however, was still stranger and more audacious. Instead of working to consolidate his gains and strengthen the fragile league, he proposed to launch a crusade against the Persian Empire, the Greeks' great enemy. Some 150 years earlier, the Persians had tried to invade Greece. They had almost succeeded, and it remained their dream to try it again and get it right. With Persia a constant threat, The Greeks could never rest easy, and their maritime trade was cramped by the power of the Persian navy. In 334 BC, Alexander led a united army of 35,000 Greeks across the Dardanelles Straits and into Asia Minor, the westernmost part of the Persian Empire. In their first encounter with the enemy, at the Battle of the Granicus, the Greeks routed the Persians. Alexander's generals could only admire his boldness. He seemed poised to conquer Persia, fulfilling his mother's prophecy in record time. He succeeded through speed and by seizing the initiative. Now soldiers and generals alike expected him to head straight east into Persia to finish off the enemy army, which seemed surprisingly weak. Once again, Alexander confounded expectations, suddenly deciding to do what he had never done before, take his time. That would have seemed wise when he first came to power, but now it seemed likely to give the Persians the one thing they needed, time to recover and replenish. Yet Alexander led his army not east, but south, down the coast of Asia Minor, freeing local towns from Persian rule. Next, he zigzagged east and then south again, through Phoenicia and into Egypt, quickly defeating the weak Persian garrison there. The Egyptians hated their Persian rulers and welcomed Alexander as their liberator. Now Alexander could use Egypt's vast stores of grain to feed the Greek army and help keep the Greek economy stable while depriving Persia of valuable resources. As the Greeks advanced farther from home, the Persian navy, which could land an army almost anywhere in the Mediterranean to attack them from the rear or flank, was a worrying threat. Before Alexander set out on his expedition, many had advised him to build up the Greek navy and take the battle to the Persians by sea as well as land. Alexander ignored them. Instead, as he passed through Asia Minor and then along the coast of Phoenicia, he simply captured Persia's principal ports, rendering their navy useless. These small victories, then, had a greater strategic purpose. Even so, they would have meant little had the Greeks been unable to defeat the Persians in battle, and Alexander seemed to be making that victory more difficult. The Persian king, Darius, was concentrating his forces east of the Tigris River. He had numbers and his choice of location, and could wait in ease for Alexander to cross the river. Had Alexander lost his taste for battle? Had Persian and Egyptian culture softened him? It seemed so. He had begun to wear Persian clothes and to adopt Persian customs. He was even seen worshipping Persian gods. As the Persian army retreated east of the Tigris, large areas of the Persian Empire had come under Greek control. Now Alexander spent much of his time not on warfare, but on politics, trying to see how best to govern these regions. He decided to build on the Persian system already in place, keeping the same titles for jobs in the government bureaucracy, collecting the same tribute that Darius had done. He changed only the harsh, unpopular aspects of Persian rule. Word quickly spread of his generosity and gentleness toward his new subjects. Town after town surrendered to the Greeks without a fight, only too glad to be part of Alexander's growing empire, which transcended Greece and Persia. He was the unifying factor, the benevolent, overseeing God. Finally, in 331 BC, Alexander marched on the main Persian force at Arbela. What his generals had not understood was that, deprived of the use of its navy, its rich lands in Egypt, and the support and tribute of almost all of its subjects, the Persian Empire had already crumbled. Alexander's victory at Arbela merely confirmed militarily what he had already achieved months earlier. He was now the ruler of the once mighty Persian Empire. Fulfilling his mother's prophecy, he controlled almost all of the known world. Interpretation. Alexander the Great's maneuvers bewildered his staff. They seemed to have no logic, no consistency. Only later could the Greeks look back and really see his magnificent achievement. The reason they could not understand him was that Alexander had invented a whole new way of thinking and acting in the world, the art of grand strategy. In grand strategy, you look beyond the moment, beyond your immediate battles and concerns. You concentrate instead on what you want to achieve down the line. Controlling the temptation to react to events as they happen, you determine each of your actions according to your ultimate goals. You think in terms not of individual battles, but of a campaign. Alexander owed his novel style of strategizing to his mother and to Aristotle. His mother had given him a sense of destiny and a goal, to rule the known world. From the age of 3, he could see in his mind's eye the role he would play when he was 30. From Aristotle, he learned the power of controlling his emotions, seeing things dispassionately, thinking ahead to the consequences of his actions. Trace the zigzags of Alexander's maneuvers, and you will see their grand strategic consistency. His quick actions against first Thebes, then Persia, worked psychically on his soldiers and on his critics. Nothing quiets an army faster than battle. Alexander's sudden crusade against the hated Persians was the perfect way to unite the Greeks. Once he was in Persia, though, speed was the wrong tactic. Had Alexander advanced, he would have found himself controlling too much land too quickly. Running it would have exhausted his resources, and in the ensuing power vacuum, enemies would have sprung up everywhere. Better to proceed slowly, to build on what was there, to win hearts and minds. Instead of wasting money on building a navy, better simply to make the Persian navy unusable. To pay for the kind of extended campaign that would bring long-term success, first seize the rich lands of Egypt. None of Alexander's actions were wasted. Those who saw his plans bear fruit in ways they themselves had been entirely unable to predict, thought him a kind of god, and certainly his control over events deep in the future seemed more godlike than human. To become a grand strategist in life, you must follow the path of Alexander. First, clarify your life. Decipher your own personal riddle by determining what it is you are destined to achieve, the direction in which your skills and talents seem to push you. Visualize yourself fulfilling this destiny in glorious detail. As Aristotle advised, work to master your emotions and train yourself to think ahead. This action will advance me toward my goal. This one will lead me nowhere. Guided by these standards, you will be able to stay on course. Ignore the conventional wisdom about what you should or should not be doing. It may make sense for some, but that does not mean it bears any relation to your own goals and destiny. You need to be patient enough to plot several steps ahead, to wage a campaign instead of fighting battles. The path to your goal may be indirect. Your actions may be strange to other people, but so much the better. The less they understand you, the easier they are to deceive, manipulate, and seduce. Following this path, you will gain the calm, Olympian perspective that will separate you from other mortals, whether dreamers who get nothing done, or prosaic, practical people who accomplish only small things. Keys to warfare. Military history shows that the key to grand strategy, the thing that separates it from simple garden variety strategy, is its particular quality of forethought. Grand strategists think and plan further into the future before taking action. Nor is their planning simply a matter of accumulating knowledge and information. It involves looking at the world with a dispassionate eye, thinking in terms of the campaign, planning indirect, subtle steps along the way, whose purpose may only gradually become visible to others. Not only does this kind of planning fool and disorient the enemy, for the strategist, it has the psychological effects of calm, a sense of perspective, flexibility to change in the moment while keeping the ultimate goal in mind. Emotions are easier to control. Vision is far-seeing and clear. Grand strategy is the apex of rationality. Grand strategy has four main principles, distilled here from case histories of the most successful practitioners of the art. The more you can incorporate these principles into your plans, the better the results. Focus on your greater goal, your destiny. The first step toward becoming a grand strategist, the step that will make everything else fall into place, is to begin with a clear, detailed, purposeful goal in mind, one rooted in reality. We often imagine that we generally operate by some kind of plan, that we have goals we are trying to reach. But we're usually fooling ourselves. What we have are not goals, but wishes. Our emotions infect us with hazy desire. We want fame, success, security, something large and abstract. This haziness unbalances our plans from the beginning and sets them on a chaotic course. What have distinguished all history's grand strategists, and can distinguish you too, are specific, detailed, focused goals. Contemplate them day in and day out, and imagine how it will feel to reach them, and what reaching them will look like. By a psychological law peculiar to humans, clearly visualizing them this way will turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Clear, long-term objectives give direction to all of your actions, large and small. Important decisions become easier to make. If some glittering prospect threatens to seduce you from your goal, you will know to resist it. You can tell when to sacrifice a pawn, even lose a battle, if it serves your eventual purpose. Your eyes are focused on winning the campaign and nothing else. Widen your perspective. Grand strategy is a function of vision, of seeing further in time and space than the enemy does. The process of foresight is unnatural. We can only ever live in the present, which is the ground for our consciousness, and our subjective experiences and desires narrow the scope of our vision. They are like a prison we inhabit. Your task as a grand strategist is to force yourself to widen your view, to take in more of the world around you, to see things for what they are and for how they may play out in the future, not for how you wish them to be. You can take a step in this direction by always trying to look at the world through the eyes of other people, including, most definitely, your enemy, before engaging in war. Your own cultural preconceptions are a major hindrance to seeing the world objectively. Looking through other people's eyes is not a question of political correctness or of some soft, hazy sensitivity. It makes your strategies more effective. Grand strategists keep sensitive antennae attuned to the politics of any situation. Politics is the art of promoting and protecting your own interests. Your behavior in the world always has political consequences, in that the people around you will analyze it in terms of whether it helps or harms them. To win the battle at the cost of alienating potential allies or creating intractable enemies is never wise. Sever the roots. In a society dominated by appearances, the real source of a problem is sometimes hard to grasp. To work out a grand strategy against an enemy, you have to know what motivates him, or is the source of his power. Too many wars and battles drag on because neither side knows how to strike at the other's roots. As a grand strategist, you must expand your vision not only far and wide, but under. Think hard, dig deep. Do not take appearances for reality. Uncover the roots of the trouble, and you can strategize to sever them, ending the war or problem with finality. A part of grand strategy related to severing the roots is seeing dangers as they start to sprout, then cutting them down before they get too big to handle. A grand strategist knows the value of preemptive action. Take the indirect route to your goal. The greatest danger you face in strategy is losing the initiative and finding yourself constantly reacting to what the other side does. The solution, of course, is to plan ahead, but also to plan subtly, to take the indirect route. Preventing your opponent from seeing the purpose of your actions gives you an enormous advantage. So make your first move merely a setup, designed to extract a response from your opponent that opens him up to what comes next. Hit him directly, and he reacts, taking a defensive pose that may allow him to parry your next blow. But if he can't see the point of your strike, or if it misleads him as to where the next one will come from, he is defenseless and blind. The key is to maintain control of your emotions and plot your moves in advance, seeing the entire chessboard. In working on the level not of the battle, but of the campaign, your first step is crucial. It should usually be deceptively soft and indirect, making it harder to read. The Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor during World War II was a devastating surprise, but as the first move of a campaign, it was a disaster. The Japanese showed their hand too quickly, rallying American public opinion to an intense level of anger. They ensured that the Americans would prosecute the war to the bitter end, and it was the Americans who had the greater military resources. Always pay attention to the first step of the campaign. It sets the tempo, determines the enemy's mindset, and launches you in a direction that had better be the right one. Reversal. Grand strategy involves two dangers that you must consider and combat. First, the successes it brings you in your first campaigns may have the same effect on you that easy victory on the battlefield gives a general. Drunk on triumph, you may lose the sense of realism and proportion on which your future moves depend. Even such supreme grand strategists as Julius Caesar and Napoleon eventually fell victim to this dynamic. Losing their sense of reality, they began to believe that their instincts were infallible. The greater the victory, the greater the danger. As you get older, as you move to your next campaign, you must retrench, strain doubly hard to rein in your emotions and maintain a sense of realism. Second, the detachment necessary to grand strategy can bring you to a point where you find it hard to act. Understanding the world too well, you see too many options and become as indecisive as Hamlet. Without the desire to fight, without a capacity for the violence war churns up, we cannot deal with danger.